Forge your inner armor.
I came out as a neuropsychologist working in a children's hospital. Had a great opportunity to become the division chief there of this pretty large children's hospital. And, I thought I was going to do this the rest of my life. I'd been taught neuropsych. I've been taught how to make diagnoses, how to put people into the boxes. You have your DSM and what you're taught is like, as quick as you can with your testing and your interview, put them in a box, right? As I was doing that, I was starting to run into some more technology where we were actually not just looking at behaviors, but actually looking at the brain. In about a 10-year span, studied over 50,000 brains. And guess what I found? Everyone is different. Everybody listening to this podcast right now, your brain is unique. It's different. There will never be anybody from the beginning of time until the end of time that will have the exact same brain. And I had been down this road of take them all and put them in this box and then have them get on this medicine to address that issue. And then I'd have the parents come back and they'd say, that didn't really work for him. I put him on this medicine and he has tics, or he can't sleep at night, or he's anxious, or now he's more depressed. Well, then it'd be put him on more medicine. And the more I studied this and the more we were working at the children's hospital, some of these kids would end up on the ICU because they were getting overdosed on these meds. And I started to realize the thing we're neglecting the most in all this is the brain. And so that really pushed me. I would say until it was maybe 8 or 9 years into my career, like, man, I got to step back and I got to start measuring the brain and study the brain first. And as I did, one, I realized how much I didn't know. And two, I started to see how we could help people change their lives in ways that went way beyond a pill bottle. That literally the brain is more powerful than that stuff. And that's where our discussion has to start, is with the brain. I experienced this early on in my career where you can make assumptions about the brain. In Michigan in the early 90s, I worked with a team of people that developed one of the first fetal alcohol syndrome clinics. So these kids were coming in from the Upper Peninsula, all over the state, early on to see if they had fetal alcohol syndrome. There was some, suspicion that they might. Their family practice docs had sent them in, or their pediatricians. And before they'd get there, we would get scans or images of their brain, because one of the things in fetal alcohol syndrome is how that alcohol can affect the brain. And you would see some of these images that were just so awful, so sad to see of these brains, right? And we would say, oh my goodness, what's this child going to look like when they come into the clinic? I mean, they're going to be in a wheelchair, maybe a feeding tube. Who knows what's going on with this child, because the brain just looked so bad, right? And then all of a sudden, the door would open up and Sally would be carrying her violin and she's wanting to learn her third language. And we'd all be looking at each other like, what? Like we didn't know from that image how different and how unique the brain could be. So even in something might look a certain way, but until you really study it, you don't really know. Currently, I've assessed or worked with 10 of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. But it didn't start there. You know where it started was with people like Sally, where I was like, the brain is amazing. Yeah. Like, this brain should not be able to do what it's doing. And I realized I'm putting like parameters around the brain and saying, well, this is all it can do. This is the ceiling that you have. And then I started to realize, wait a minute, we don't know what the ceiling is. And I can tell everybody that's listening right now, whatever you think your ceiling is higher than that, because the brain has huge capacity. And it was those Sallys and those Johnnies and those different people, those brains I saw that were doing amazing things when we thought there's no way that the brain could be able to do that. That really set me up to work with the average person, the person out there with their kid who has an anxiety disorder, or the Kirk Cousins of the world, who's 13 and 2 right now, or whatever they are.
Yeah.